From Klamath oral tales to Haudenosaunee democracy, Native history predates Columbus by millennia. So why is it buried in silence? Behold a hide ledger, tightly stretched, adorned with symbols tracing a people's heartbeat through the seasons. This is the winter count of the Yanktonai, a Dakota group whose record spans 71 years, each image marking a pivotal event between the first snowfalls. One glyph might show a brutal winter starvation, another a raid that shifted alliances, or a celestial event like a meteor shower that lit the plains. These aren't just doodles, they're a compressed timeline, a visual diary that whispers of resilience in the face of endless winters. But here's the kicker. This sliver of history is merely one thread in a vast tapestry. Every native nation, from the arid Southwest to the foggy Pacific Northwest, carries its own unbroken chain of stories, rituals, and survival strategies honed over generations. Yet, amid this diversity, a grim unity binds them, a shared shadow cast by forces that sought to unravel those very threads. The video series acknowledges the impossibility of encapsulating every nuance of Indigenous history within the borders of what is now the United States. Instead, it aims to plug the leaks in mainstream narratives, adding layers of complexity where oversimplifications have flattened the truth and correcting misconceptions that have festered like untreated wounds. Studies reveal a stark reality in American education, where curricula skim over Native histories as if they were optional footnotes. In 219, a student from the Navajo and Hopi nations highlighted this absurdity, her U.S. history textbook devoting just 10 pages out of 307 to Indigenous peoples, as if centuries of sovereignty could be squeezed into a pamphlet. This is an oversight. It's a systemic blind spot that leaves generations thinking Native stories end with pilgrims or cowboys. The series narrows its lens primarily to Native histories within the U.S., while nodding to the artificial borders that slice through sovereign lands, like those of the Kanyenke Ka, or Tohono O'odham Nation, and the forced displacements that uprooted groups such as the Ho-Chunk from ancestral homes. Titled Native American History for Breadth and Focus, it dives into 24 episodes to unpack details often glossed over, turning whispers into roars. Over 500 Native nations exist within the U.S. alone, some federally recognized, others lingering in bureaucratic limbo, their sovereignty debated in courtrooms far from their lands. The host, a member of the Navajo Nation, explains that Navajo itself is a European-imposed label, while her people self-identify as Diné, meaning the people, a term that underscores community over conquest. Preferences vary, some embracing the imposed names for practicality, others reclaiming ancient ones in acts of quiet defiance. Throughout the series, Native emerges as a frequent shorthand, paired with Native folks or Native people to humanize discussions often reduced to statistics. Indigenous casts a wider net, encompassing global First Peoples who inhabited lands long before colonizers redrew maps. From the Aleut in Alaska's icy reaches to the Chumash along California's coast, and extending worldwide to the Sami in Scandinavia, Maya in Central America, or Ainu in Japan. It's a term that honors endurance without borders. American Indian carries baggage, accepted by some for its longevity in U.S. law, treaties, and agencies like the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where elders might prefer it as a badge of hard-won recognition. Yet, its flaws glare, the misnomer stemming from Columbus's geographical blunder, and its official scope excluding Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, as if identity could be gerrymandered. Emerging in the 1960s amid civil rights fervor, Native American offered an alternative, gaining traction in academia and policy. But it too stumbles. It's American, implying a continental sweep that ignores preferences elsewhere, like First Nations in Canada for groups excluding Inuit and Métis, or Indigenous in Latin America. Ultimately, self-identification reigns supreme, a personal choice amid hundreds of nations, each with unique languages and customs, defying any one-size-fits-all label. It's like trying to bottle an ocean. The attempt reveals more about the bottler than the water. The paradox at history's core persists. Countless unique Native nations, each with timelines as distinct as fingerprints, suggesting no singular Native American history exists. Yet shared ordeals weave them together, unfolding in varied times and places, but rooted in settler colonialism. That insidious system uniting disparate fates. Colonialism, broadly, involves one nation dominating another's resources from afar, like Britain's grip on 19th-century Nigeria, extracting wealth without integration. Settler colonialism escalates this, aiming not just to control but to erase and replace, clearing lands for newcomers as if the original inhabitants were mere obstacles. This isn't a dusty event or a villain's whim, it's the foundational logic of the U.S., shaping wars, treaties, policies, and laws that echo into today like a bad contract no one can void. The system's fingerprints complicate even basic questions, such as tallying native populations, because pre-contact, labels like Indian or Native American didn't apply, people simply lived as themselves, tied to land and kin. By the 19th century, federal bureaucrats invented a monolithic Indian race, cataloging tribal members and assigning blood quantum, a fractional measure of supposed indigenous ancestry, dilutable over generations like ink in water. This wasn't science, it was strategy. Facilitating land grabs by deeming descendants less native and absolving the government of treaty obligations. A slow, bureaucratic vanishing act. Yet, natives persist. The plan's epic fail evident in the 220 census, where 9.7 million people, or 2.9% of the population, identified as American Indian or Alaska Native. Numbers deceive, though, blending enrolled tribal members, those from unrecognized nations, and casual claimants citing family lore of a Cherokee princess ancestor. A myth as persistent as it is unverifiable. Deeper dives into identity await in Episode 4, where the threads of blood, culture, and choice tangle further. Over 5 centuries, colonialism's bootprint has reshaped native worlds, but this era spans a mere 20 generations, a blink against millennia of presence since time immemorial as descendants of the continent's first inhabitants. Mainstream histories distort this, pegging native stories to 1492's arrival and ending them in the late 1800s, implying they begin with Europeans or that pre-contact eras are unknowable voids. Oral traditions beg to differ, preserving detailed knowledge, like the Klamath's accounts of a volcanic eruption 7,600 years ago that birthed Crater Lake, confirmed by geology predating Stonehenge. The series ventures before 1492, exploring creation stories, worldviews, and enduring connections to place, food, and ancestors. Elements colonialism tried but failed to snuff out. It also traces how settler impacts lingered beyond the 1800s, rippling into the present, linking past injustices to ongoing struggles. Omitting native history fosters public amnesia, undervaluing colonization's lasting scars and erasing natives from both timelines and today's dialogues. Without native history, U.S. history crumbles, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy's ancient democracy influencing founders more than admitted. Native history defies singularity, encompassing hundreds of timelines across nations, each with unique experiences, languages, traditions, and relations. Yet natives remain, connected beyond erasure attempts, actively shaping futures in ways that mock the old scripts. History's irony bites hard. Over 500 native nations, each with timelines as distinct as fingerprints, suggest no single Native American history exists. Yet, a shared thread stitches their stories together, not by choice but by force. Settler-colonialism, a system as relentless as prairie winds, binds these diverse nations. Unlike classic colonialism, where one nation plunders another's resources from afar, like Britain's grip on 19th century Nigeria, settler colonialism plays a longer, uglier game. It doesn't just dominate, it seeks to erase and replace. The goal? Clear the land of its original people, making room for newcomers as if the first inhabitants were mere weeds. This wasn't a single event, no mustache-twirling villain cackling from a fort. It was the United States' foundational logic, baked into centuries of wars, treaties, and laws that still ripple through native lives today. Think of it like a machine that never stopped running, grinding down sovereignty while pretending it was progress. From the Trail of Tears to reservation policies, every move was calculated to supplant, not coexist. Yet, the paradox persists. Countless unique histories, languages, and traditions, unified by this shared scar, each nation's story a distinct verse in a grim collective ballad. Number: settler colonialism. Settler colonialism's machinery didn't just steal land, it rewrote identities. Before European boots hit the soil, terms like Indian or Native American didn't exist. People were simply Diné, Lakota, or Haudenosaunee, living as kin to their lands. By the 19th century, the U.S. government concocted a new category, lumping all native peoples into a single race called Indian. They cataloged tribal members, assigning each a blood quantum, a supposed percentage of Indian blood measurable like whiskey in a barrel. This wasn't science, it was a bureaucratic guillotine. The logic? Dilute native identity over generations, declare descendants not Indian enough, and seize their lands while voiding treaty obligations. It was erasure dressed as math, a plan to make native nations vanish without firing a shot. Yet, the 220 census tells a different story. 9.7 million people, 2.9% of the U.S., identify as American Indian or Alaska Native. The numbers blur, mixing enrolled tribal members, those from unrecognized nations, and folks claiming a distant Cherokee princess ancestor, a myth as persistent as bad coffee. This complexity muddies simple questions like, how many Native Americans are there? Because colonialism's shadow still warps the answers. Despite the system's best efforts, Native peoples endure, shouting, "We're still here," into the void of a plan that failed. Episode 4 will dig deeper into this tangle of blood, culture, and self-definition. Number: blood quantum. 5 centuries of colonialism scarred Native nations, yet this span, roughly 20 generations, is a fleeting moment against their millennia-long presence. The phrase "since time immemorial" captures this deep-rooted existence, tying Native peoples to the continent's first inhabitants. Mainstream narratives often distort this, framing Native history as starting in 1492 and fading by the 1800s, as if it begins with Columbus and ends with cowboys. This creates a false void, implying pre-contact history is unknowable. Yet, oral traditions prove otherwise, like the Klamath's recounting of a volcanic eruption 7,600 years ago, forming Crater Lake, a story geology confirms predates Stonehenge. This series reaches before 1492, exploring creation stories, worldviews, and ties to land, food, and ancestors that endured despite erasure attempts. It also traces how colonial impacts stretched beyond the 1800s, shaping today's realities, from land disputes to cultural revival. Ignoring Native history fuels public amnesia, downplaying ongoing effects of colonization and sidelining Native voices from past and present. Without Native history, U.S. history is a half-told tale, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy's ancient democracy outshining many European models. Native history isn't one story, but hundreds of timelines across nations, each with unique languages, traditions, and connections. Native peoples remain, defying erasure, actively shaping futures with resilience that laughs in the face of old scripts. Winter counts and oral traditions outlasted empires. Native nations, still here, weave histories richer than any textbook's 10 pages. Their resilience mocks colonial plans, proving survival is the ultimate defiance. History isn't just past, it's present, shaping what's next. For more untold stories, subscribe to Histories and Native Tales, hit the bell, and drop a comment on what Native history you want explored next.